When a movie lives in the hearts of millions for over 3 decades, you know it's more than just a film. It's a cultural moment. Pretty Woman wasn't just a romantic comedy. It was the kind of love story that people didn't just watch, they memorized. From the unforgettable image of Julia Roberts standing on Hollywood Boulevard in thigh-high boots to Richard Gere's charming, suit-clad businessman lowering the limousine roof to win her back hit became one of the most iconic love stories in cinema history. And now, more than 30 years later, Vivian and Edward are finally returning, back in 1990. Pretty Woman introduced audiences to a romance that broke all the rules. Vivian, a struggling but spirited woman with big dreams, and Edward, a lonely billionaire used to controlling everything but his emotions, created a love story that felt both impossible and perfect. The movie didn't just give us a fairy tale. Ending redefined what a modern fairy tale could look like. It had laughter, heartbreak, charm, and one unforgettable shopping montage that turned Beverly Hills into a runway of self-worth and empowerment. What made Pretty Woman stand out wasn't just the plot, it was the chemistry. Julia Roberts lit up the screen with her playful innocence and bold attitude. Richard Gere, cool and collected, gave us a man slowly learning to feel again. Together, they turned a simple story into a timeless connection. The lines, "big mistake," "big," "huge," are still quoted today in the film's soundtrack, especially "Oh." Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison plays like a love letter to the 90s. Over time, the movie didn't fade away. Instead, it became even more beloved. Generations grew up watching Vivian climb out of her world and into something better, not because a man saved her, but because she learned to value herself. It was romantic, yes, but it was also about transformation. That's why fans have kept asking the same question for years. Will there ever be a sequel? Could there be more to Edward and Vivian's story? For decades, the answer seemed like a firm no. Julia Roberts often said she didn't believe in sequels, especially for romantic comedies. Richard Gere moved on to more serious roles. And director Gary Marshall, who had crafted the original with such heart and humor, sadly passed away in 2016. With that loss, many fans believed the door had closed forever on the possibility of Pretty Woman 2, but something changed. Whispers started to float through Hollywood a few years ago. Small leaks, private discussions, and reunions between Julia and Richard at award shows sparked rumors. Would they revisit the magic? Was there more to tell about Vivian and Edward? Could a love story born in the 90s find new life in today's world? And now, finally, it's happening. The return of Pretty Woman isn't just another reboot. It's a continuation of something deeply personal to audiences. Fans who watched the original as teenagers are now grown adults, many with families of their own, and they're ready to revisit a story that once made them believe in second chances. The sequel brings with it more than just star power. It brings emotional weight, history, and the feeling of coming home. As we prepare to see Julia Roberts and Richard Gere together again, it's not just nostalgia, it plates curiosity. What has happened to these characters over the years? Have they stayed together, grown apart, or faced something new that pulled them back into each other's lives? These are the questions driving fans wild with excitement, because at its core, Pretty Woman wasn't just about falling in love, it was about choosing love, no matter how complicated the path. And now, as the sequel takes shape, fans are hoping for that same magic, baited, matured, and just as heartwarming. The wait is finally over. Pretty Woman isn't just walking back into our lives, she's ready to rewrite the fairy tale. The news didn't break with a bang, it crept in like a whisper that turned into a wave. A quiet confirmation buried in a studio announcement, a sly smile from Julia Roberts during an interview, and a few cryptic social media posts later, the world finally knew Pretty Woman 2 was officially happening. And the best part? Both Julia Roberts and Richard Gere had signed on to return. After years of dodging sequel talk, both stars were finally ready to step back into the shoes of Vivian and Edward, older, wiser, but still carrying the spark that made their story unforgettable. The official green light came from Walt Disney Studios, who originally distributed the first film, through their Touchstone Pictures label. This time, Disney isn't playing it safe. They're going all in. Sources close to the production revealed that the sequel had been quietly developed over the past 2 years. It's kept under wraps by a tight team of writers and producers who wanted to ensure the story respected the original. And now, the project has moved into the early stages of full production, with a script completed, a director confirmed, and a tentative release window already planned. But it wasn't just Julia and Richard's return that set the internet ablaze. It was the emotional weight behind it. The two actors hadn't shared the screen together in decades, yet their chemistry in interviews and reunion specials still feels electric. In a surprise joint statement released by the studio, Roberts and Gere both shared how special the original film was to them, and how deeply personal it felt to return to these characters now, at this stage in their lives. Julia admitted that time gave her a new perspective on Vivian, saying, "She was never just a hooker with a heart of gold. It was a woman trying to find herself in a world that didn't give her many options. I've lived more life now, and I see her even more clearly." Gere echoed that sentiment, adding, "Edward was someone who didn't know how to connect, and he found that connection in the most unexpected place. Coming back to him now, I want to see how he's changed, or maybe how he hasn't." Announcement was made even more emotional by the absence of Gary Marshall, the beloved director who brought Pretty Woman to life. In his memory, the sequel is being executive produced by his daughter, Kathleen Marshall, who has taken the torch with pride and sensitivity. She's spoken openly about her father's love for the film and his long-standing wish to revisit the characters if the story ever felt right. Now under her guidance, the project hopes to honor his legacy, while exploring deeper layers of Edward and Vivian's journey. The new director stepping in is Sarah Gavron, known for her work on emotionally rich, character-driven films like Suffragette. She brings a modern lens to storytelling that balances romance, realism, and resilience. Gavron has already promised that this sequel won't be a carbon copy of the first TIS, going to dig into new themes, ask harder questions, and offer a story that speaks to today's world without losing the charm that fans loved in 1990. Her focus, she puts it, is to take these two iconic characters and place them in a world where time has passed. Love has been tested, and life has added layers they never expected. Casting news beyond the lead pair is slowly trickling in. So far, rumors suggest that a major A-list actress may be cast as Vivian's best friend or possibly a rival from her past. A younger actor has also reportedly been cast to play a character tied to Edward's business empire, possibly his son, or protege, adding generational tension to the sequel. And while the full cast list hasn't been officially released yet, insiders hint at several surprise cameos and callbacks to the original. The tone of the sequel is expected to be more mature, but still warm and hopeful. The script, written by Nora Fields, a rising screenwriter, known for emotionally honest dialogue centers on themes of second chances, evolving love, and what it means to fight for connection in a world that's constantly changing. Fields is said to have studied the original intensely, crafting a story that mirrors its emotional beats while taking the characters into fresh territory. She reportedly had long conversations with both Roberts and Gere to make sure the script reflected the growth and complexity they envisioned for Vivian and Edward. Behind the scenes, the film is being supported by a powerhouse production team, including some of the same minds behind recent romantic revival hits. There's also buzz that the soundtrack will play a big role once again, with original music inspired by Roy Orbison's classic and new songs from contemporary artists aimed at capturing that same emotional rhythm. The creative team wants every moment of the film to feel both familiar and brand new, honoring the past while carving out a future that feels earned. Fans responded to the announcement with pure joy. Within hours, social media platforms exploded with emotional posts, fan theories, and side-by-side clips of the original film with imagined scenes of the sequel. TikTok edits of Vivian and Edward went viral again. YouTube channels dedicated to movie nostalgia covered the news in real time. It was clear that the world wasn't just ready, they were hungry for this story to return. The wait is still ongoing, But the road ahead is now clearly lit. Production is set to begin in early 2026, with location scouting already underway in Los Angeles, New York, and possibly even overseas. The studio plans to release a full trailer by late 2026, aiming for a theatrical premiere the following spring. And until then, fans will continue to speculate, dream, and celebrate the reunion they thought would never come. Because some love. Stories don't need to be rushed, they just need to come back at the right time. Asterisk. The news didn't break with a bang, it crept in like a whisper that turned into a wave. A quiet confirmation buried in a studio announcement, a sly smile from Julia Roberts during an interview. And a few cryptic social media posts later, the world finally knew. Pretty Woman 2 was officially happening. And the best part? Both Julia Roberts and Richard Gere had signed on to return. After years of dodging sequel talk, both stars were finally ready to step back into the shoes of Vivian and Edward, older, wiser, but still carrying the spark that made their story unforgettable. The official green light came from Walt Disney Studios, who originally distributed the first film through their Touchstone Pictures label. This time Disney isn't playing it safe, they're going all in. Sources close to the production revealed that the sequel had been quietly developed over the past 2 years, kept under wraps by a tight team of writers and producers who wanted to ensure the story respected the original. And now, the project has moved into the early stages of full production, with a script completed, a director confirmed, and a tentative release window already planned. But it wasn't just Julia and Richard's return that set the internet ablaze, it was the emotional weight behind it. The two actors hadn't shared the screen together in decades, yet their chemistry in interviews and reunion specials still feels electric. In a surprise joint statement released by the studio, Roberts and Gere both shared how special the original film was to them, and how deeply personal it felt to return to these characters now, at this stage in their lives. Julia admitted that time gave her a new perspective on Vivian, saying she was never just a hooker with a heart of gold. No, was a woman trying to find herself in a world that didn't give her many options. I've lived more life now, and I see her even more clearly. Gere echoed that sentiment, adding, Edward was someone who didn't know how to connect, and he found that connection in the most unexpected place. Coming back to him now, I want to see how he's changed, or maybe how he hasn't.
Ow.
Announcement was made even more emotional by the absence of Gary Marshall, the beloved director who brought Pretty Woman to life. In his memory, the sequel is being executive produced by his daughter, Kathleen Marshall, who has taken the torch with pride and sensitivity. She's spoken openly about her father's love for the film and his long-standing wish to revisit the characters if the story ever felt right. Now, under her guidance, the project hopes to honor his legacy. While exploring deeper layers of Edward and Vivian's journey, the new director stepping in is Sarah Gavran. Known for her work on emotionally rich, character-driven films like Suffragette, she brings a modern lens to storytelling that balances romance, realism, and resilience. Gavran has already promised that this sequel won't be a carbon copy of the first hits, going to dig into new themes, ask harder questions, and offer a story that speaks to today's world without losing the charm that fans loved in 1990. Her focus, as she puts it, is to take these two iconic characters and place them in a world where time has passed. Love has been tested, and life has added layers they never expected. Casting news beyond the lead pair is slowly trickling in. So far, rumors suggest that a major A-list actress may be cast as Vivian's best friend, or possibly a rival from her past. A younger actor has also reportedly been cast to play a character tied to Edward's business empire, possibly his son, or protege, adding generational tension to the sequel. And while the full cast list hasn't been officially released yet, insiders hint at several surprise cameos and callbacks to the original. The tone of the sequel is expected to be more mature, but still warm and hopeful. The script, written by Nora Fields, a rising screenwriter known for emotionally honest dialogue, centers on themes of second chances, evolving love, and what it means to fight for connection in a world that's constantly changing. Fields is said to have studied the original intensely, crafting a story that mirrors its emotional beats while taking the characters into fresh territory. She reportedly had long conversations with both Roberts and Gere to make sure the script reflected the growth and complexity they envisioned for Vivian and Edward. Behind the scenes, the film is being supported by a powerhouse production team, including some of the same minds behind recent romantic revival hits. There's also buzz that the soundtrack will play a big role once again, with original music inspired by Roy Orbison's classic and new songs from contemporary artists aimed at capturing that same emotional rhythm. The creative team wants every moment of the film to feel both familiar and brand new. Honoring the past while carving out a future that feels earned, fans responded to the announcement with pure joy. Within hours, social media platforms exploded with emotional posts, fan theories, and side-by-side clips of the original film with imagined scenes of the sequel. TikTok edits of Vivian and Edward went viral again. YouTube channels dedicated to movie nostalgia covered the news in real time. It was clear that the world wasn't just ready, they were hungry for this story to return. The wait is still ongoing, but the road ahead is now clearly lit. Production is set to begin in early 2026, with location scouting already underway in Los Angeles, New York, and possibly even overseas. The studio plans to release a full trailer by late 2026, aiming for a theatrical premiere the following spring. And until then, fans will continue to speculate, dream, celebrate the reunion they thought would never come. Because some love stories don't need to be rushed, they just need to come back at the right time. Asterisk, it opens with silence. Not music, not dialogue. It's just the sound of soft city traffic and the hum of life. Then, slowly, the camera pans up to a familiar pair of high heels, stepping out of a sleek black car. As the camera moves upward, a woman in a bold red coat walks toward a luxury hotel entrance, composed and unmistakably Vivian Ward. But this time, she's not standing on Hollywood Boulevard. She's walking into her own world. And just like that, It's a Pretty Woman to trailer doesn't just tease a sequel, it reintroduces a legend. The teaser doesn't give away everything, but what it does show is enough to set the internet on fire. Julia Roberts steps back into the role of Vivian with effortless grace. She's older now, but her spark hasn't faded. The trailer shows her running what seems to be a charity organization, likely aimed at helping women who face the same struggles she once did. Her life appears grounded and independent, full of purpose and strength. Yet there's a hint of longing behind her smile, especially in the quiet moments. She's built something for herself, but there's someone missing. That someone appears. Exactly 37 seconds into the trailer, the camera cuts to a man standing on the rooftop of a tall building, looking down at the city below. The silver hair, tailored suit, and the soft piano version of "Oh, Pretty Woman" playing in the background give it away instantly. It's Edward Lewis. Richard Gere's return is understated but powerful. There's no dialogue, just a subtle look on his face, a mix of regret and longing. He hasn't forgotten her. One of the most emotional parts of the trailer is a quick flashback scene. We see the iconic image from the first movie, Edward in the white limo, holding the rose, climbing the fire escape. But this time, it's blended with a present-day shot. Edward standing outside a different building, holding the same red rose, but unsure whether he should go in. It's symbolic. He saved her once, but now he's not sure if he's the one who needs saving. Fans who look closely at the teaser notice subtle visual callbacks. There's a scene with Vivian standing in front of a boutique window, but instead of being judged or pushed out, she's being welcomed in. Another clip shows her at a red carpet gala, where photographers shout her name not as a novelty, but as someone who commands respect. These moments flip the original narrative on its head. Vivian is no longer the outsider trying to fit in. She owns the space now. And Edward is learning how to re-enter her world on her terms. There's a brief moment of dialogue, only a few seconds, but it's enough to give fans goosebumps. In a quiet, dimly lit restaurant, Edward looks across the table and softly says, "I thought I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know what I needed. Until now." Vivian replies, with a soft laugh, and I thought I needed someone to rescue. Me. Turns out, I rescued myself. It's not just a romantic exchange, it's a statement. The dynamic between them has evolved. They're equals now. Both have lived, made mistakes, and grown. And now they're meeting again, not as who they were, but as who they've become. Another standout moment in the trailer is the introduction of a new character, a young woman in her 20s who works with Vivian. She's energetic, witty, and clearly admires Vivian. There's a theory floating around that she might be Vivian's daughter, or maybe just someone Vivian is mentoring. Either way, their scenes together hint at a passing of the torch. Vivian may be the central figure, but her impact is growing beyond just her own story. Richard Gere's Edward also seems to be facing a personal crisis. In one scene, he's shown at a boardroom table, surrounded by younger executives. They're pitching aggressive new business strategies, but he looks disconnected. Another quick shot shows him walking alone through Central Park at night. That's clear that the man who once lived for deals and profits is now questioning what truly matters. That contrast between his world and Vivian's compassionate work adds emotional weight to the story. They've both changed, but have they changed too much to find their way back to each other? The teaser closes with a quiet but powerful final shot. Vivian and Edward stand on a balcony overlooking the city skyline. There's no music, just the wind. Edward turns to her and says, "If this is our second chance, I don't want to waste it." Vivian looks at him, eyes soft, and whispers, "Then don't." Cut to black. The screen fades in with the title, Pretty Woman, the second chapter, followed by the words "coming soon." Fans were quick to analyze every frame of the trailer. Some noticed a photo in Vivian's office of her and Edward from years ago, hidden behind a plant proof she never really moved on. Others caught a moment where Edward stands outside a dance studio, watching Vivian teach a group of young girls ballet, hinting she's finally embraced something she once dreamed of. Every second of the trailer is packed with visual storytelling, offering layers for longtime fans to unwrap. But the trailer also raises important questions. Are Vivian and Edward still legally together, or did life pull them apart? Is this a reunion or a rediscovery? Will the movie end in another fairy tale kiss, or a more grounded understanding of love in later life? The trailer doesn't say. That's what makes it so effective. It invites you in, gives you pieces, but keeps the full picture just out of reach. The tone is emotional, romantic, but also thoughtful. There's humor, but it's quieter, more mature. The vibrant energy of the original is still there, but it's wrapped in life experience. There's also a noticeable shift in how the story is told. Less fantasy, more reality, but still filled with hope. From the first frame to the last, the trailer proves one thing. This isn't just a sequel, it's a reunion that matters. For Vivian and Edward, for Julia and Richard, and for the audience who never stopped believing in the magic of their story. Asterisk. Every great love story leaves behind a question. What happens after the fairy tale? In the case of Vivian and Edward, the end of Pretty Woman wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning, a limo, a fire escape, and a kiss hinted at a new life. But the world never got to see what came next. Now, over 30 years later, that question finally has space to be explored. With Pretty Woman 2 on the way, fans are buzzing with theories, speculation, and hopes for where this sequel will take one of Hollywood's most iconic couples. One of the most talked about possibilities is that Vivian and Edward didn't get their perfect happily ever after. Sure, they might have tried, but life is messy. Did they get married? Did they stay together? No. Or did the very differences that made them fall in love also push them apart? Some insiders suggest the sequel picks up after a long separation. Vivian and Edward have been living separate lives, building different futures. But fate, or maybe unfinished feelings, pulls them back into each other's orbit. If this theory holds true, the sequel becomes more than just a romantic comedy. It turns into a story about rediscovery. Two people who once meant everything to each other, now facing the emotional weight of time. Maybe they built lives they thought they wanted, only to realize something was missing. Maybe they're both successful, respected, and admired, but still haunted by the one person who truly saw them. That kind of emotional tension could give the film unexpected depth, turning the reunion into something more powerful than just nostalgia. There's also a theory that the sequel won't just focus on Vivian and Edward's relationship, but on the people they've influenced. Some fans believe the young woman seen in the trailer is Vivian's daughter, possibly Edward's too. If so, the story could explore generational relationships. Maybe their daughter is at a crossroads, struggling with love or identity, and it brings Vivian and Edward together to help her, forcing them to confront their own unfinished story in the process. This kind of family-centered plot opens up huge emotional possibilities. Imagine Edward trying to bond with a daughter he barely knows, or Vivian having to explain the choices she made after their love story faded. The past would hang heavy in every scene, but so would the potential for healing and reconnection. This could be a story not just about romance, but about forgiveness, growth, and what it means to love someone even after they've disappointed you. Another popular fan theory suggests that Vivian is now a mentor or leader in a nonprofit organization, possibly helping women in need, especially those with difficult pasts. If true, this would reflect a powerful evolution in her character. She's no longer just the woman who was saved, she's the one doing the saving. Edward, on the other hand, might still be dealing with the world of finance and corporate deals, but with less joy than before. The theory goes that Edward's world has become colder, more distant. He seeks out Vivian because he's lost touch with something humans, something real. This dynamic could create dramatic conflict. What happens when two people who once shared love now live in completely opposite worlds? Can they find common ground again? Or will their values clash? Maybe Edward tries to help Vivian's cause with his wealth, but she refuses to let him buy his way in. The clash between their past and present identities could be the heart of the film, not just romantic sparks, but a deeper look at how people change and whether love can survive those changes. There's also speculation that the sequel might introduce a new romantic rival, someone from Vivian's present, who challenges Edward to step up. Perhaps Vivian is seeing someone else, someone stable and reliable, but who lacks the emotional connection she once had with Edward. This would raise the stakes and make Edward work for her in a way he never had to before. It flips the original story's power dynamic and makes Vivian the one with the upper hand, and then there's the possibility that Pretty Woman 2 won't end the way fans expect. In the original, Vivian and Edward overcame their differences, but the sequel might choose realism over fantasy. What if the film ends not with a kiss, but with mutual respect? What if they don't reunite romantically, but instead find peace and closure? A story about grown-up love doesn't always need a wedding or a fairy tale ending. Sometimes the most powerful ending is one where both characters walk away stronger, even if they walk in different directions, of course. There's also a chance that the movie brings everything full circle. Maybe Vivian and Edward are reunited, face trials, and realize that after everything, time, pain, growth, they still belong together. A mature love story. One not built on fantasy, but on understanding. Maybe Edward learns to support Vivian's world without controlling it. Maybe Vivian learns that opening her heart again doesn't mean losing herself. The emotional payoff would be enormous, not just for the characters, but for the audience who's waited decades for this moment. Plot theories aside, one thing is certain: Pretty Woman 2 has the opportunity to do something very rare. It can honor a legendary story while writing a brand new chapter that feels honest, moving, and relevant to today's world. Love doesn't stop at 30. Growth doesn't end with youth. Happy endings sometimes they take time. With Julia Roberts and Richard Gere returning, backed by a thoughtful script and a new creative team, fans can expect a sequel that's not just about reliving the past, but redefining what love looks like when the fairy tale gets older and wiser. Asterisk: when a sequel takes over 3 decades to arrive, it doesn't just show up quietly, it makes waves before it even hits the screen. That's exactly what's happening with Pretty Woman 2. Before a single ticket is sold, before the premiere lights flash, the The film has already captured the attention of fans across the globe. From red carpet rumors to online countdowns, the anticipation feels less like hype and more like the reunion of two old friends, Vivian and Edward, back where they belong. But now the biggest questions remain. When is it coming? And where can we watch it? The official release date hasn't been printed on posters yet, but insider reports confirm that Pretty Woman 2 is aiming for a spring 2026 theatrical release, specifically eyeing an April premiere. The studio is strategically positioning the film to capture both the romantic energy of spring and the nostalgia of the original's March 1990 release. An April launch also gives the film room to breathe away from the summer blockbuster chaos, but close enough to award season buzz if it strikes emotional gold. But what about streaming? We live in a world where a film's platform is as important as the film itself. Will Pretty Woman to go directly to Netflix? Drop on Disney Plus since the studio is involved? Or will it stay old school and demand a theater experience? As of now, the plan is theatrical first, streaming later. Disney is reportedly confident that Pretty Woman 2 can perform at the box office. Thanks to the wide appeal of Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, plus the massive wave of 90s nostalgia currently sweeping through pop culture, the studio is banking on viewers who grew up watching the original to show up in person and maybe even bring their own daughters, friends, or partners to experience it on the big screen. It's a movie that aims to bring generations together. However, it won't be long before it hits streaming. Disney's internal schedule suggests a 3-month window after the theatrical debut before it lands on Disney Plus, possibly bundled with behind-the-scenes footage, interviews, and legacy content from the original Pretty Woman. For fans who can't make it to theaters, the streaming release will feel just as much like an event. Expect social media trends, live watch parties, and editorials all over the internet. The moment the teaser trailer dropped, the internet lit up like it was 1990 all over again. On TikTok, clips from the original film surged in views, especially edits combining old Vivian moments with the new trailer footage. On Twitter now, X, fans shared personal stories about how Pretty Woman influenced their lives, some even crediting it with shaping how they see love, confidence, or taking chances. Hashtags like #PrettyWoman2, #Vivian and Edward, and #Julia and Richard trended for hours. Instagram fan pages posted side-by-side photos of the cast then and now, with captions like, "We waited 35 years for this." Even celebrities joined the conversation. Reese Witherspoon posted a heart emoji over a still of Julia Roberts in the new red coat. Oprah Winfrey, who famously adored the original film, mentioned it in a recent interview, saying, "There's just something about Vivian. I can't wait to see where her story goes next." The global buzz is not just from movie fans, it's coming from the heart of Hollywood itself. To keep the excitement building, the studio has planned a full promotional campaign starting early. 2026, expect TV appearances, talk show interviews, and a special reunion segment featuring Julia Roberts and Richard Gere sitting down to reflect on their journey. There's also talk of releasing a limited edition, remastered version of the original Pretty Woman in select theaters and streaming platforms to reintroduce fans and introduce younger viewers to the magic that started it all internationally. The hype is just as strong in Europe, Australia, and Latin America, where the original movie became a romantic staple. Local theaters are already preparing for early promotional screenings. Paris is even rumored to host the film's international premiere, a nod to the fashion-forward style of Vivian and the city's timeless romance. Meanwhile, in Japan and South Korea, pop stars have been sharing their excitement, helping push the film into trending territory on platforms like Weibo and TikTok Japan. And then, there's the soundtrack. While no official track list has been announced yet, fans expect a mix of old and new. There's speculation that a modern female artist, possibly Taylor Swift, Adele, or Dua Lipa, might record an updated version of Oh, Pretty Woman, or an original ballad for the end credits. This alone could turn the film into a chart-topping musical moment and introduce the story to a whole new generation of listeners. All signs point to Pretty Woman to becoming more than just a sequel. It's shaping up to be a cultural moment, a blend of love story, legacy, and life experience that crosses age, borders, and background. It's not just about seeing Edward and Vivian again, it's about seeing what love looks like after life has had its way with it. In a time when movie releases come and go within weeks, this one is sticking. Because when something has meant this much to so many people, the return isn't just welcomed, it's celebrated. So whether you're watching it in a theater with popcorn in hand, or curled up on the couch streaming it late at night, one thing is certain: Vivian and Edward's story isn't over. It's just finally ready for its next chapter. Time changes people, but not always in the ways they expect. And in Pretty Woman 2, the emotional weight of the years becomes just as important as the romance itself. This isn't a story about falling in love for the first time. It's a story about what love looks like after you've already loved and lost, changed and grown, made choices and lived with them. That's what gives this sequel its heart. Because while the fashion and fairy tale glamour may still sparkle, Pretty Woman 2 is reaching for something deeper, a kind of romance that's messier, wiser, and more real than ever before. At the center of it all is Vivian Ward. When we first met her, she was underestimated by everyone except the audience. Now, she walks into every room with purpose. But even with her strength, Vivian's emotional journey isn't over. In this sequel, she's no longer trying to prove she belongs. She knows she does. The new challenge for her is vulnerability. After building a life on independence and confidence, can she let herself trust again? Can she open the same heart that once got broken? These are questions that modern audiences relate to more than ever, especially those who've had to pick themselves up, rebuild, and keep going. Edward, too, isn't the same man he was. In the first film, he was cold, detached, and used to control. But Vivian cracked his shell. Now, years later, he's had time to reflect and to realize that love isn't a deal to close or a problem to solve. The Edward we meet in the sequel is quieter, maybe even lonelier. His journey is about reconnection, not just with Vivian, but with the part of himself that once believed he could be more than just a businessman. We see a man who's successful but emotionally distant, trying to figure out whether he let go of the only thing that ever truly mattered. The emotional themes run deeper than just their relationship. One major thread in Pretty Woman 2 is the idea of reinvention, not just once, but over and over again. The characters in this film are learning that it's okay to change direction, to admit mistakes, and to choose a new path even later in life. Vivian may have created a life for herself, but she still wonders what might have been if she and Edward had stayed together. Edward may have built an empire, but he can't shake the feeling that he sacrificed the one thing money couldn't buy. These thoughts aren't just romantic, they're universal. They speak to anyone who's ever questioned their past or longed for a second chance. The film also touches on modern themes of self-worth and empowerment, especially for women. Vivian's evolution from the girl in the dress to a respected, self-made woman highlights how far she's come. But the sequel doesn't pretend that growth erases old wounds. Instead, it shows how healing is layered. Vivian still carries scars from the judgments she once faced. And now, as a woman in her 50s navigating love again, she faces a whole new set of assumptions. The film leans into these emotional complexities, showing that even strong women wrestle with doubt, memory, and fear of being hurt again. Friendship plays a bigger role this time around, too. One of the most touching elements is Vivian's connection with younger women in her organization or personal circle. Whether it's mentoring someone who reminds her of her younger self or confiding in a trusted friend, Vivian's not alone anymore. Her emotional world is richer, supported by people who lift her up and challenge her when she needs it. These relationships give the film a strong sense of community and emotional support, showing that love isn't the only thing that holds us together. As for Edward, he's no longer the man with all the answers. In fact, one of his greatest struggles is letting go of control. For decades, he's been the one making decisions, giving orders, and staying emotionally guarded. But in this story, we see him unravel just enough to become human again. He has to listen, apologize, and face the reality that his success never filled the space that Vivian left behind. This emotional unraveling is powerful because it shows that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bridge back to intimacy. And then there's the romance itself folder. Slower, but deeper. Instead of rushing into passion, Vivian and Edward tiptoe around each other, testing the waters, slipping into conversations filled with subtext and emotion. There are no grand speeches, but rather small moments. A shared memory, a lingering glance, an unfinished sentence. Their love isn't loud. It's lived in. I feel more real than ever. The movie also explores forgiveness not just of each other, but of themselves. Both Vivian and Edward carry guilt for how things ended. The sequel allows them to talk about it, to sit with the uncomfortable truths of the past. There's a rawness in these conversations, but also relief. It's rare for romantic films to show the kind of emotional cleanup that comes after a long time apart. But Pretty Woman 2 doesn't shy away from it. Instead, it uses it as the foundation for something new. Even the city itself becomes part of the emotional landscape. The film is set across multiple locations: Los Angeles, New York, and possibly Europe. But each place reflects something about where the characters are emotionally. LA brings back memories. New York shows who they've become. And wherever they go next might represent where they're headed, both individually and together. Ultimately, Pretty Woman 2 is about love, but not just the shiny kind. It's about the kind that bends without breaking, that pauses without ending, that hurts but still hopes. It's about two people who had something beautiful, lost it, and now have the chance to build something even stronger, not in spite of the years that passed, but because of them. This sequel isn't trying to repeat the magic. It's trying to evolve it. To show that love in your 50s can be just as thrilling as it was in your 20s, maybe even more so, because it comes with the wisdom, pain, and clarity that only time can give. Asterisk, some movie announcements make headlines. Others create a moment. But Pretty Woman 2 has done something much rarer. It sparked a movement. The second this sequel was confirmed, the internet didn't just light up with news, it ignited with emotion. For many fans, this isn't just a film. It's a return to something they never stopped loving. It's the kind of story that shaped their idea of romance, self-worth, and second chances. Now, as Julia Roberts and Richard Gere step back into their legendary roles, the world isn't just watching, it's feeling it.